to head into our post-lunch portion of our events with a video from our 2020 virtual conference, if you will, from one of our local partners, EcoCycle. And so Adrian's going to cue that up.
The impacts of global climate change are happening now. Melting glaciers, rising sea levels, heat waves, drought, wildfires, more intense hurricanes and flooding. These impacts are inescapable, threatening people, wildlife, and the environment. The amount of warming that will occur in this century and beyond depends largely on the choices we make now and over the next decade. If we are to be successful in restoring balance to our climate, we must go beyond reducing greenhouse gas emissions to actually drawing down the dangerously high level of carbon dioxide that is already in our atmosphere. And our best option to do that may be through carbon farming. What is carbon farming? Carbon farming is a simple idea. Applying compost and other practices that increase the level of organic carbon in soil restores soil health and increases photosynthesis in plants and their ability to draw down and store additional CO2 from the atmosphere in the ground. When we send our food and yard waste to the landfill, we're accelerating climate change by producing methane, a powerful greenhouse gas. If we avoid the landfill and instead use these materials to make compost and apply it to depleted soil, we are restoring nature's nutrient cycle that builds soil slowly over time. Thanks to research by the Marin Carbon Project and other recent studies, we know that compost use and other regenerative practices that build soil can draw down significant amounts of carbon and store it long-term in the soil. Carbon farming is a climate solution, and it results in other benefits like more nutrient-dense food and more drought-resilient crops. As farmers know well, the more soil carbon you have, the better your soil is able to hold water and nutrients to make crops more resilient to weather variables. As a nonprofit recycler with the mission to advance zero-waste policies and practices, EcoCycle is striving to make this connection between waste, compost use, and climate change.
In my previous career as an organic vegetable farmer in Boulder County, I struggled to get enough nutrients in my marginal soil. I even attempted to collect organic waste from the stores and restaurants who bought my produce on my own, so I could make my own quality compost. I came to EcoCycle and eventually became director of our compost department because I wanted to see the change I knew we had to make to keep our soils healthy. But here's the thing, we can't just ask farmers to use compost and fix our climate for us. The global market is telling them exactly the opposite. Grow food as cheaply as possible and ignore your soil. Every farmer I've ever met cares deeply for their land, but we need creative incentives to shift how we manage our soils and our waste. What's exciting for me is this creativity is happening at an accelerating pace. I'm very proud that farmers in Boulder County, both organic and non-organic, are partnering with local government and Colorado State University to conduct research and demonstration trials on working land and highly degraded land to find out what works best for our climate. But what about the urban soil and the people who manage that? What about our own yards? What's the potential to store carbon and build those soils? And maybe more importantly, can urban soil projects create public awareness and help drive those agricultural incentives that we need? And that's how EcoCycle's carbon farming campaign began.
In 2019, EcoCycle created our Community Carbon Farming Project to make carbon farming accessible and understandable to non-farmers. Anyone with access to a lawn or grassy yard can conduct their own mini carbon farming trials to measure carbon sequestered from the atmosphere and create a climate solution literally in their own backyards. Participants apply a prescribed amount of compost to half their trial area and measure soil carbon over time against the non-composted half of the trial. The cumulative results of these community science trials generate valuable information about the value of compost programs and the application of compost in helping soil draw carbon from the atmosphere.
By testing carbon sequestration on urban lands, our hope is that the data collected can start to tell us What is the potential for urban soils to sequester carbon? But perhaps more importantly, it's an opportunity to learn firsthand about your own soil and to increase public awareness about the potential to reverse climate change simply by prioritizing soil health worldwide.
At next year's Soil Revolution Conference, we'll report on the results of our initial 3-year study we conducted with 230 volunteers measuring carbon sequestration in their own backyards. Want to participate yourself? You can join through our observational carbon farming project. For more information, visit ecocycle.org/takeaction/community carbon farming, or contact Dan Mach, Director of Compost, at dan@ecocycle.org.
Dan Mach is here today. Dan, you want to give a wave? Hey! I hear it's going well, but somehow we didn't fit you into the program today. We'll definitely do it next year, so sorry about that. Okay, so we just want to quickly thank our sponsors again. Adrian, if you could cue those up. Again, at the platinum level, Colorado Corn. What? This works. Boulder County Parks and Open Space. Oh man, Daniel, and this is awesome. John. The City of Boulder, also at a platinum sponsor, thank you. BOSC, Boulder Open Space Conservancy at our gold level. Colorado State University Extension and Revolution Soil and Seed at our silver level. Northern Water, City of Longmont, Green Cover Seed at our bronze level, in addition to Rocky Mountain Farmers Union, A1 Organics, Buffalo Brand Seed, Hume Alpha, and Indigo Ag. So thanks again to our sponsors. So our next part of the session today is just finding out what we're up to locally. We keep hearing from people that we bring in from away, but you might be curious what we're doing locally. So first up, we have Therese Glowacki from Boulder County Parks and Open Space to give some remarks for a couple minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Soil Revolution. I have to say thank you to the people putting this together. 6th time that we've had this Soil Revolution. I've been fortunate enough to come to almost every single one of these, and every time I just am so impressed with the quality of information that we're learning about and the inspiration that we get from this. So I am going to talk, and I'm actually going to ask Adrian just to advance the slides so I don't have to try and... Oh, it does work so good. It's a down button that goes forward. Okay, because I want to go backwards. There we go. Okay, we're good. Okay, so I'm Therese Glowacki, and I'm the director of Boulder County Parks and Open Space. And in a whirlwind tour, I'm going to tell you what we're up to. So for those of you that don't know, this is a map of Boulder County, and Boulder County Parks and Open Space owns and manages over 100,000 acres. The land that we're primarily managing is dark green on this map, and then the light green, kind of more lime-ish, closest to the dark green are conservation easements. So of our 100,000 acres, we have about 60,000 that we own in fee. Of that 60,000 acres, about 25,000 is in agricultural land. So that's a lot of the land that we are focusing on today with the Soil Revolution. And some of the things that we have been working on through our department in the last couple of years, we completed a climate adaptation and mitigation plan. And that was approved by our county commissioners, and that really is focusing a lot on carbon farming, which you just heard about from EcoCycle. It's focusing on connecting habitats from the plains to the mountains. A compost addition, all sorts of things that really are helping our department do our part to help mitigate the effects of climate change and help our ecosystem be resilient in the face of climate change. We also, just yesterday, updated our cropland policy. So our cropland policy really focuses on the 16,000 acres of irrigated cropland that we manage. We first adopted that policy in 2012. It was updated in 2016, and then again now, 2021. And one of our main focuses in this policy is soil health. And this Soil Revolution Conference has really helped motivate our staff and our tenant farmers to really take this to heart. So we are really looking forward to implementing more soil health practices on our 16,000 acres, well, on our 25,000 acres, really. And we have 2 new staff to do that. One is here, his name is Mike Foster, he's our new Ag Division Manager. And then we've also hired Cassandra Schnarr, thank you. I keep looking at Vanessa, who used to be in that role. So we have 2 new staff in addition to our longstanding staff that are helping our agricultural tenants move in that direction. So Boulder County Parks and Open Space is really also all about biodiversity, and we have amazing biodiversity on our lands, not just our natural lands. There's plenty of biodiversity that we want to protect on our agricultural properties as well. And so some of our high priority projects are wetland restoration, prairie restoration, creek restoration, and as you just heard, carbon farming. So with the carbon sequestration part of our priorities, we've been working with the Natural Resources Ecology Lab out of Fort Collins, out of CSU, and we are now finishing up the 3rd year of our carbon farming research, and perhaps maybe next year we will also be able to present some of the results of that. That's where we are adding compost both to our native range lands in very small areas and also to our agricultural lands to look at production increases and cost analysis. We're also looking at companion cropping, which you see there, and wetland restoration. Another big area that we're focusing on is our prairie restoration. And anyone who lives and works around here or pretty much throughout the West knows that cheatgrass is a big issue. So we have been working with a chemical, believe it or not, and I'm not a big chemical person, but it's a chemical called Rejuvra, which really targets cheatgrass. And the photo on the left was the field before, which was 80% cheatgrass. And with one application of this very targeted chemical, we have enabled prairies to come back. The native seeds in the soil are just flourishing. We have increases in pollinator habitat. So, and it really takes the place of prescribed fire. We love prescribed fire, but in this environment, we have burn bans, we have no burn days. Prescribed fire just isn't easy. So we're looking at prairie restoration through new eyes with this. We've done a lot of creek restoration after our 2013 flood. This is along the St. Vrain Creek. We had to restore probably 4 miles of a 7-mile stretch between Lyons and Longmont. We are working with, part of that creek restoration is really helping to advance aquatic habitat species and connecting habitats. One of the two big projects we've worked on recently that really influence our agricultural production is working on changing out diversion structures on the St. Vrain Creek and making them passable for fish, passable for sediment. And we've worked with the St. Vrain Valley School District, growing and releasing endangered species like the red-bellied dace here in the photo. So these are win-win-win projects, and they're not cheap and they're not fast, but we've been able to complete 2 of them in the last year. And all of the area that we've been working along the St. Vrain is Preble's meadow jumping mouse habitat. Is our one endangered species. Endangered mammal in Boulder County, so it's very important for us to keep a healthy, thriving population. And after the 2013 floods, we were able to go out and sample potential Preble's habitat, and we found that it expanded. So the flood did good for Preble's, which is a good result. And then if you live around here, besides the 2013 flood, we've also had a few fires. Our biggest one was in 2020. It was in October 2020. The Cowwood Fire burned 10,000 acres here in Boulder County, largest wildfire in 100 years. So, and half of that was on county open space, which is good in many ways because it was not in neighborhoods. And our ecosystem needs fire. So we had, it was devastating and still is devastating. So we had to rally around preserving that soil. So just like the soil revolution is preserving agricultural land, we also had to look at ways to really keep the soil, the burned soil, up on the mountains just west of the mountains in western Boulder County. And the way we did that is with some federal grant money. We did about 2,000 acres of aerial mulching. What you see here is the helicopter. They pick up mulch. We used wood, ground wood that were from burned trees in the Cowwood Fire, and then you drop it from a helicopter to keep the soil in place. So that soil stays up at Ohio Valley Ranch rather than making it into Left Hand Creek and through the irrigation systems and out onto your farms. We also had a wonderful flush of native grasses after the fire, so much so that we were out collecting native big bluestem for our prairie restoration projects. So there are some benefits with fire for sure. So just again, that's Boulder County Parks and Open Space in a nutshell. Thank you very much to Trent Kirscher and Vanessa as organizers of this conference. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Next up, we have Nick Glazier from Colorado Corn.
Well, thank you so much. Again, my name is Nicholas Glazier, Executive Director of the Colorado Corn Administrative Committee, and I told you a little bit about what we do, where we sponsor research, try and develop markets for our producers, and do outreach to the public and decision makers on the corn and the corn industry. A little bit about me to tell you my story is I grew up on a corn farm. I grew up on a corn farm in northeast Colorado, and when I went to college, I had no intention of going back until I spent some time in a lab and went, not for me. So I went back to the farm, and somehow, when I went back, I was able to convince my dad to buy a new tractor, to buy a new planter, and to buy a strip tiller. And back in 2005, when we were doing this, that was some pretty progressive farming practices for where we were at. We continued upon that path to do more no-till, to do things that leave the soil with residue on it so it doesn't erode and we don't have the temperatures in the summer. But that goes to show you just that we are always progressing. And this last fall, Peyton and Vanessa and Ryan took me to Jules Van Tyne's farm where they were doing different types of studies and doing some intercropping on a corn farm, and it was so cool. I was taken aback about what could be done and how cool things could be done to improve soil health and carbon sequestration in the corn industry. And to kind of go along with that, to show that we have always been progressive as the corn industry from 1980 to 2015. So for 35 years, what we had seen is we had seen some massive improvements in what we've done environmentally. We've actually decreased the amount of land to grow a bushel of corn by 41%. We've reduced soil loss and erosion by 58%. We've improved our irrigation efficiency by 46%. We've improved, sorry, my eyes are not what they used to be. We've improved the energy use to increase a bushel of corn by 41%. We've actually reduced the amount of greenhouse gases emitted per bushel by 31%. So we've always been willing to adapt and progress in the corn growing industry. And we're not ready to just sit on our laurels. You know, as an industry, the National Corn Growers Association, who we're closely affiliated with, has come out with sustainability goals for 2030. And we want to improve upon what we've done for the past 35 years by increasing our land use efficiency by 12% more, by reducing erosion by 13% more, and also by increasing our irrigation efficiency further by 15% and increasing energy use efficiency by 13% and further lowering our greenhouse gas emissions by 13%. And we are committed to doing this by 2030 because we realize how important sustainability is, not to just our farmers and their operations, but to society as a whole, to make sure that we can be a part of the solution to the climate change that we are facing and making sure we are making a positive impact rather than a negative difference. And so we're continuing to do that, and our path on this has really been outlined by our latest strategic plan as the Colorado Corn Administrative Committee. We spent the last year developing a new strategic plan, and our number 2 priority after getting our house in order is sustainability and making sure that we are supporting and promoting and communicating and developing more sustainable practices for our farmers to make sure that they can have access to the research, access to the practices and the production methods that they need to be successful in this realm. And so we are now partnering with the Colorado Department of Ag and their soil health initiative to make sure that we can find ways to put more soil health initiatives and more soil health building production practices in our producers' hands and on their land. Because this is what it's going to take to make this corn crop, this corn industry, more sustainable for the future. Because when you have companies like Walmart come out and put out a sustainability report on row crops, you know it's serious this time. And so we want to work with them to make sure that that corn that they grow is a sustainable ingredient, because we think corn is a foundational ingredient. It's in so many things in your everyday lives. It's in your foods, it's in your fridges, it's in your house, it's in your cosmetics and your pharmaceuticals. And if we want sustainable products, that base ingredient has to be sustainable to start. And so that's why we're here. We want to make sure that we're partnering with our partners here at the Boulder Valley and Longmont and Boulder Valley Conservation Districts, with Boulder County Open Space, and with all of our growers to try and incentivize and provide as many opportunities to take advantage of the sustainability that we are offering so that we can be more sustainable for the future. So if you have any questions, I'll be at the back for the rest of the day, but very much looking forward to this path that we're taking to be a sustainable partner in agriculture. So thank you.
Next up, we have Cindy Lair from the Colorado Department of Agriculture speaking about state legislation updates.
Well, thank you, Lauren, and it's nice to be here today. I'm not here to talk about our soil health program, but Ryan Taylor, who's on our team and coordinating the soil health program for the Department of Agriculture, is here, and please stop by and talk to him. So glad to speak after Nick, and he mentioned our partnership. Really excited to have Colorado Corn being one of the main entities that's going to deliver the STAR program. I wanted to just say real quick that I've been working for the Department of Ag with the State Conservation Board and 75 conservation districts in Colorado for 16 years. I got my start here in Boulder County with the Boulder Valley and Longmont conservation districts, and you guys are the ones that helped me understand what conservation districts could mean and do, and the value you bring in the partnership. And I just really take my hat off to the whole partnership in Boulder County, because you all work so well together, and I just admire the great work you do and appreciate being able to call myself a partner of yours. So thank you very much. First slide, please. I'm going to talk about the legislation that I think is meaningful this year. We had a lot of legislation that brought meaning to agriculture in Colorado, and also conservation districts and just sustainable ag and conservation in general. But House Bill 1181, that wasn't a Department of Agriculture bill. Many of you weighed in on the outreach efforts for it. It was really brought to the forefront by the Colorado Collaborative for Healthy Soils, and that group got the word out far and wide with a lot of different interests, and to try to say, hey, let's work through this. Let's deal with the science. Let's deal with the legalities of it. What does it take to create this program? And I think they did a really good job of moving this forward in the legislature, and it was successful. It didn't put money into it at this point, but eventually we hope to get there. So then there was Senate Bill 2135. We had 2134 and 2135. I'll get to the other one pretty soon, but what I liked about 2135 was it gave $2 million to the Department of Agriculture for implementing the soil health program and the STAR program that you're going to hear Vanessa talk about later. So that was a real shot in the arm to get House Bill 1181 off the ground and running. So it was a good effort there. Next slide, please. The Agricultural Climate and Drought Resilience Office is, it's called ADCRO, and that was House Bill 1242. A lot of people were wondering, what the heck is the Department of Ag trying to do? And to be honest with you, up until about 2018, the department really wasn't doing anything that focused on climate. And we've been working on drought over the years, but what can you do about drought as a Department of Ag, a regulatory agency? It's more about looking at the numbers. Yep, it's dry. How can we help farmers with this? And so AdCro is not changing the infrastructure or the hierarchical chart of the Department of Agriculture, but it is a way for us to have a focus on how the agricultural industry is working with the governor's greenhouse gas reduction roadmap and the pollution reduction roadmap. And we do have sustainability measures that we are working towards. We want to reduce 1 million metric tons of carbon from the atmosphere by 2030. I think it's going to be an easy lift. The problem is we have so little inventory to know where we are in the state of Colorado. Fortunately, NRCS has measures on things that farmers have done. There are about 29 different practices that have been done, and NRCS is gauging those, but not all producers are engaged in those programs through NRCS, so it's a weak inventory. But we're working on building out a better inventory so we can actually measure and show what our reductions are. And so I'm excited that this office will be able to have that focal point on it. We have one new person coming on as a result of this legislation, and we will be collaborating with the Conservation Services Division for sure on the output for this. But we're really looking at trying to pull in more and more grant dollars at the federal level to meet our needs statewide. Next slide, please. And more stimulus funding. I talked about Senate Bill 235, and that was stimulus money from the state. We also had funding for different, let's see, well, we have a lot of different things that money is going towards: agricultural events and the stock show complex, Colorado Proud, agricultural drought resilience. We had, I think, $3 million for that. And then through agricultural efficiency, that's that 235 I was mentioning before. $2 million went towards soil health. $3 million of that is actually going to the Acre 3 program, which is advancing Colorado's renewable energy and energy efficiency program. And so $3 million to go to that. There's so many things that we can be doing to manage electricity, our use of electricity better in agriculture, and that Acre 3 program is doing great things for that. And then finally, the cool thing that isn't really related to conservation so much, but it is important, as an earlier presenter from Maine, Daniel May, was able to talk about the economics there and the importance of ag loans. So it's nice for the Department of Agriculture to start an ag lending program to meet some of the new farmers and new agricultural producers where they are starting. So next slide, please. So the goals for some of these opportunities are to, advance the economic opportunities in agricultural communities and drive greater equity. There hasn't been a lot of focus about equity and diversion in the agricultural sector, but we're doing more to try to find underserved minorities and underserved populations and see how we can help them get started, because it isn't just a place for white guys to perform. So there's lots of opportunities for tribes and for us to be working with tribes too. And so working on helping to supercharge our supply chain in Colorado. We all have seen supply chain problems, and how can we bring more locality, make it local, and keep it local. Obviously, there's world markets that we support and work in and sell Colorado products in, but keeping it local is really important too. And trying to accelerate the growth of regenerative agriculture. And sometimes we come across with all these new terms, and a lot of times regenerative ag hasn't been something that conventional ag has said that they wanted to subscribe to. But I said, hey, you've been doing conservation all along. Conservation really is, in a lot of ways, regenerative ag. What I like about the term regenerative ag, though, is that it is not conserving what you have, but it's making what you have better. And so to me, that's why I was excited to take on the term regenerative ag in my own vernacular. But we're also making sure that we're aligning with the other department goals and improving people's lives in rural and urban areas of the state. Next slide, please. And then I mentioned House Bill 230 or Senate Bill 234, and that is providing funding for drought and for drought resilience. We have created a grazing advisory board with that. We have drought education and research support with Colorado State University. And then also funding for conservation districts. All of the conservation districts in the state of Colorado were given $15,000 to work on drought, or any other way that they could interpret that it would affect drought. They could use that money for that. So that was a nice shot in the arm for the conservation districts that they don't normally expect from the state. And then there's a competitive grant program, and that they've just recently selected how many people were going to be able to get a piece of this $1.5 million that they've had available for those grants. So next slide, please. I mentioned the Acre 3 program with $3 million. I think that's going towards about 66 projects that they have to spend that by July 1st of next year. So it's amazing to see one person in this shop be able to get 66 projects funded. And then the soil health program, this $2 million is actually leveraging, about $2.5 million other dollars of federal and other private money. And so we're excited to be able to have that to get the STAR program off and running. And we have 17 conservation districts that we selected to do this, and also 4 eligible entities that would work with us too, Colorado Corn being one of those, and that's very exciting. Next slide. That's about all I had to say. I was trying to keep it to 10 minutes, and how did it work? Well, I got at 10:44, so almost there. Thanks a lot. It's so nice to be with you. We've been kept cooped up for too long, so it's nice to see a lot of faces, even if there's a mask that separates us. So thanks a lot.
Great, thank you, Cindy. Our next up is Elizabeth Black, farmer and founder of the Citizen Science Soil Health Project.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Black with the Citizen Science Soil Health Project, which is a 10-year-long project to help growers prove that they're improving their soil. Our project is sponsored by Western SARE of the USDA and many local organizations. I want to thank all our local sponsors for their continuing support, which has been key to getting our project up and running. Next slide, please. 48 Boulder, Weld, and Larimer County growers are currently enrolled in the project, and they have all made a 10-year commitment to participate. Next slide. We use the Haney and Plfa tests to monitor our growers' progress at improving their soil's health. The Haney test is similar to a standard soil test in that it measures pH, NPK, trace, and more. The Plfa test gives our growers an overview of which classes of microbes are living in their soil. Next slide. The Haney test also includes a soil health score, which is down there on the bottom. And that is computed from the number of microbes in your soil as measured indirectly by soil respiration, plus the amount of carbon-rich food they have to eat, plus the amount of nitrogen they can supply to other living things. So the soil health score is a quick way to measure the health of your soil's microbial life. But it's sort of a blunt instrument, and it's important to notice what it does not measure. It does not tell you anything about nutrient deficiencies or pH problems or fungal bacterial ratios or soil aggregate stability. The soil health score is just one slice of a much bigger picture of your soil. Next slide. Over the first 2 years of the project, we tested 251 soil samples from a total of 177 sites in Boulder, Weld, and Larimer counties. We have since tested another 130 samples this year, our third year, to add to our data set. Next slide. At the last Soil Revolution conference, I told you about our first year findings, which were that organic and conventional growers have the same median soil health score. We also found that sites where there was no tillage, like pastures, orchards, grasslands, and forests, have higher soil health scores than tilled sites. And we found that irrigated sites tend to have higher soil health scores than dryland sites. So our highest scoring areas, those guys in the 20.94 square, tend to be irrigated untilled places like irrigated pastures or orchards. Our lowest scoring sites, down in the bottom far corner, our lowest scoring sites tend to be tilled dryland fields like dryland wheat or millet fields. Next slide. In our second year, we looked at some of the things that are exceedingly hard or impossible for a grower to change. We looked at water availability, that is the number of days a grower has supplemental irrigation water available. We also looked at soil pH and soil texture. Next slide. For water availability, we found that when a site has more days of water available, its soil health score tends to increase. In this graph, each little blue dot represents one site's water availability graphed against its soil health score. The red trend line shows that as a site has more days of water available, its soil health score tends to increase. Next slide. Just the opposite is true for pH. We found that as pH increases, as soil becomes more alkaline, soil health scores tend to decrease. The Front Range is known for its alkaline soils, and our high pH is partly why improving our soil's health will take longer here than in other areas of the country. One key strategy for improving soil health is to increase the number of fungi in your soil by disturbing your soil less. But soil fungi don't particularly like high pH soil. This doesn't mean that you can't improve your soil's health if you have a high pH, but it does mean it will be harder to do so here than in places like California or the East Coast. Next slide. Soil texture also has a large effect on soil health, and no surprise, our loamiest soils have the better soil health scores. The longest orange bar in the top graph has the highest median soil health score, and that's for loam. And scores fall off above and below loam to clay and sand, which have the lowest soil health scores. But many of our growers are starting with a soil texture handicap. The graph with the blue bars shows that loam soils are uncommon among our growers. Only 15% of our growers have loam or sandy clay loam soils, our two soil types with the highest soil health scores. 85% of our growers contend with sandy loam, clay loam, or clay soils, which are less conducive to microbial life and more difficult to improve. Next slide. We also wanted to see if it made a difference if you sample your soil in the spring or the fall. About half our growers sample their soil in May, June, and the other half sample in September and October. In this graph, the green bars are the soil health scores of sites that were sampled in the spring, and the orange bars are sites that were sampled in the fall. Just looking, you can see that there are more green bars at this end with the lower soil health scores and more orange bars up at the other end with the higher soil health scores. And you can see that the spring samplers had a significantly lower median score than the fall samplers. This is why it's important to test your soil health at the same time each year. If you test soil in the spring and then apply a soil amendment and test again in the fall, you won't be able to really tell if the amendment affected your soil's health, because any increase in the soil health score may just be due to this seasonal variation that we see here. You have to test your soil at the same time each year to really be able to assess changes in soil health. Next slide. Finally, we looked at phosphorus, which is an essential plant nutrient. Phosphorus is a Goldilocks kind of nutrient. You don't want too little or too much. You want it just right. Plants need it to grow, but too much can pollute downstream waterways and cause plant nutrient deficiencies. In this graph, the ideal phosphorus levels for most crops is right in the middle, with concerning levels at this side and at the far side. Each vertical yellow bar or red bar represents the amount of phosphorus in the soil at one site. The red bars are the phosphorus levels of conventional growers and are kind of around in the middle area. The yellow bars are phosphorus levels of organic growers and are generally quite high and on up into the concerning range. The reason some organic growers have such high phosphorus levels is because they often apply large amounts of manure or compost to boost their nitrogen levels. Each year they add more manure to replenish the nitrogen that last year's crop used up. However, manure is also rich in phosphorus, which can build up in soils over time. So slowly over several years, these growers can get pretty high phosphorus levels in their soils. These growers who are up in this concerning range are advised to switch to low phosphorus amendments, use more legume cover crops to boost nitrogen but not phosphorus, and plant buffer strips along their fields to absorb nutrient runoff and keep phosphorus out of our waterways. So to end with, we're going to play a little game. You're going to need your phone. I would like you all to predict which grower of the 7 listed here had the highest soil health score. Use your phone to record your answer, and we'll see if you grokked all these graphs I've been throwing at you. You have each grower's pH, their soil texture, the number of days of supplemental water they had, and whether the growers sampled their soil in the spring or the fall. Now remember, you are more likely to have a higher soil health score if you have low pH, better soil texture, more water available, and sample your soil in the fall. These are all organic vegetable growers in Boulder County using similar growing methods. Which one has the highest soil health score? You want to switch to the polling, Adrian? So who's winning here? Okay. So why do you think C is winning? Why did the people that did C, why do you think they're winning? Water. The guys that voted D, why do you think they're winning? pH, soil texture? Yeah, okay. So the winner is actually Farm D. They have, this is the winner, D. They don't have a huge water season, but it's adequate. And they've got this really, really good pH and soil texture. So it may be that pH drives it more than water. I don't really know. Okay, any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. All right, next up we have a short video from Tim Broderick, who is in charge of the Boulder County Sustainability Grants Program, with an update on the program. He couldn't be with us today because he's on paternity leave, so he turned this in last night, just in time, so thanks, Tim.
Hello, Soil Conference Revolution attendees. My name is Tim Broderick. I'm the Senior Sustainability Strategist for Boulder County's Office of Sustainability, Climate Action, Resilience. I'm here today virtually to talk to you about Boulder County's Sustainable Food and Ag Fund. The Food and Ag Fund launched in 2020 with the hopes of accelerating and growing the already incredible sustainable and resilient and regenerative food system that exists within Boulder County. Funding is prioritized into 5 areas: on-farm regenerative agricultural and soil health practices, farmer/producer education conferences and workshops that focus on sustainable and regenerative agricultural demonstrations, on-farm and farmers market infrastructure, sustainable local food and crop production, programmatic and resource support for frontline farm workers and organizations. To date, we've had incredible success with many of the already existing producers that you all are familiar with. To name a few, we've had incredible projects with Allen Farms, Cured, Cottonwood Farms, projects that range from composting projects via fungi to cover cropping at large scale across multiple acres with different impacts over the years, to projects that are high rotational grazing. And many of those projects, we've been able to support the infrastructure that is needed to pilot and launch those initiatives. We've also been lucky enough to be able to partner with programs like the Flatiron Farmers Coalition, in which we were able to fund education and workshop conferences. We've also been able to work with the Boulder Valley School District to go a little bit further up the food system and look at processing. So the projects to date have been spread and across the incredible supporters of the food system in Boulder County. We highly, highly encourage you to apply and learn a bit more about the fund if it may fit for something that you're interested in pursuing. Please just Google Sustainable Food and Ag Fund Boulder County. It'll come up, you'll be able to see it there. It goes into a lot more detail specifically about how funding is spread out. In total, there's $405,000 this year, which is up from $100,000 from the $305,000 from the previous year. And that's been in large part because of the interest from many of the folks like yourself in this fund and seeing that continue. And as well as the successes we've had with the incredible participants in the Sustainable Food and Agricultural Fund to date. The deadline for applications is January 5th. If you have any questions before then, I will be back December 13th from paternity leave, which I'm actually on right now. But please do not hesitate to reach out. My email address is tbroderick@bouldercounty.org. I look forward to hearing from you, and thank you for your time.
Great, thank you, Tim. And if you need that email address, you can reach out to the conference organizers and we can send that to you if you want more information and you weren't able to grab it just then. Next up, we have Peyton Ward from the Conservation District here to talk about the demonstration plots that were done this summer.
Okay, I think there's a new clicker up here. Is that it? No. So multitasking. This way. It works. Look at that. Hi guys, good afternoon. My name is Peyton Ward. I'm the DCT with the Longmont and Boulder Valley Conservation District, and I will talk closer into the mic. On to my first slide here. You know, this year with the Conservation District, we wanted to put together a little bit of a demonstration and a little bit of a study into, kind of the biggest question that we're all here to face and ask and answer, and that really is, does soil health pay? Is there a way to quantify in 2021 in corn, agriculture, the system that we're given, can we kind of demonstrate across a few different treatments, does soil health pay? And what we've kind of come up with is a farmer-led long-term look at the cost of integrating some soil health principles across multiple cropping years, and really to kind of dispel that whole thing, which I'll show you here in a minute, that common belief of that won't work here, especially in a dry climate, high pH, blah, 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 here we go. Pretty easy to do. So this is non-subsidized integration. This is farmer-led. So this is on Jules Van Tine, which is a third-generation farmer here in Boulder County. So he's kind of seen it all. And I think he's farmed this particular field, which I'm about to talk about, since, gosh, the late 50s, maybe? I mean, just since forever. And so anyway, that's kind of where we're at on that. There goes. Okay. So let's just talk a little bit about the layout and kind of what we did here. This is a 22-acre field. It's furrow irrigated. Left is west, and it waters that way. And we kind of wanted to look at, again, this is contemporary agriculture, so let's do some tillage treatments. We've got a few different corn varieties, and kind of the larger treatments that are pretty easy to look at are green, which is conventional tillage, and I'll break these down a little further in a minute. Blue, which is strip tillage. Yellow, minimum tillage. Orange is minimum tillage with some wide row interseeded cover crops. So we also did some population increases among 3 different corn varieties. We had a Pioneer P0157 Aquamax, which you'll see is drought tolerant. The Partners brand 6613 genetically modified with a neonic seed treatment, which came from the fellows there at Revolution. And we also had a untraded 6613 with a biological seed treatment, which I'll just call the conventional corn. And you'll see that kind of going, kind of throughout the rest of my talk there. And the wide row section was Partners brand 6613, genetically modified, 44-inch centers. So we had a 22-inch 16-row planter at a commercial scale, and that's how we kind of laid that out. And it's up to me to change this one. Okay, so here we are, May 27th. We were 3 weeks late planting, getting in the field this year. Very wet spring, very atypical. I think you guys remember, it almost hasn't rained since. And at the time, we couldn't stop it. And so we were in there a little bit late. Pretty much everybody here grows 90-day corn on this side of I-25. We're the same way. So we did, with this late fall, everything's kind of worked out just fine. This is Vanessa and Rodale, Jules Van Tine farmhand, and my boss. So there we are in the field. I'm going backwards, which is smart. Okay, let's talk a little bit about tillage. Furrow irrigated. And I think you guys have probably been, you've seen some furrow irrigated fields, and they're typically not the pinnacle of soil health. But you'll see on the far right-hand side, we wanted to do a conventional tillage, full treatment. Let's get in there and do what what would typically happen. And what that looks like is a moldboard plow. We mulched it twice, we land planed it, we field cultivated it, we planted the corn, and then we ditched it for irrigation. The strip tillage, which you'll see here in the middle where the tractor is, was strip tilled, field cultivated, corn planted and ditched. Minimal, which is kind of headed up this way, was field cultivated, planted and ditched. The minimal tillage with covers section was field cultivated, planted and ditched, and then the covers were planted, so thereafter, which we'll get to right here. So here we are in the first row of our interseeded trial. This is Wyatt Barnes with Red Wagon Farms. I think he's out here. He came and helped us out that day. And this is small scale. There was 2 acres of this treatment, but you can really kind of see with the minimal tillage. This is 30,000 final stand count population. So we doubled the meter on the planter, and still ended up with a competitive population. To the right there is just kind of the rest of the field. This will scale very easily. It's a very cheap thing to do. You know, you just need a basic wheat drill and timing, and you can get right in there and do that. So, moving. Okay. We, wanted to point our mixes at a few different things. They were all different. They included all of these species. I think that, depending on really the purpose of what you're doing with cover crops, that's when you can kind of get a little bit more granular. There's plenty of reasons to use all those things. They're all very viable. Some are more expensive than others, but I think that we had good luck with all of them when they showed up. So again, this is furrow irrigated, and understand that most people would tell you, kind of like what I said in that second slide, well, that's not going to work here. It doesn't work. You can't do cover crops and furrow irrigation. And you'll see July 12th, we planted June 23rd. You had some kind of coming along, and here, this was 6 weeks later in the same row. Under those sunflowers, you had buckwheat, you had flax, you had just all, it was just a madness in there, and you really couldn't even photograph it very well. But that's kind of what you can kind of expect out of that system. And that was all through irrigation. Let's go next. And on September 3rd, we had our first field day. And we had 39 attendees. We had 3 educational stations. So we had a kind of a agronomy section out in the field with our corn seed providers, Pioneer and Revolution. We had a Slake Test, which I'll get to in a second, and then we just had kind of a cover crop tour. I think it was a great visual. I know some of the folks that are here today were out there and got to take a look at, like, what does it really look like to have that level of diversity in a conventional corn system? So that was kind of how that went, and let's talk about that Slake Test right here. So you've got in 1 year, these were clods collected by a third party. All the way to the right, you've got your conventional tillage. I think you guys probably know what a Slake Test is. You gather a clod, let it dry for a few days, and then just pop it in a thing of water and see how it holds together. And a clod that'll hold together for longer is a more stable piece of dirt. It just functions better. And so in one season, if you take conventional tillage, strip till, minimal till with covers, where the water's basically clear, you can see just in a few months that things can be turned around fairly quickly. So, this is just kind of a pretty picture. And I just, I think that it really kind of demonstrates, really what's possible in this system. You've got corn that I'll show you the yield in a second and ROI of, but that corn long since died. It's no longer photosynthesizing. It's given up weeks ago, and especially with a fall like this, you've had a major opportunity to continue photosynthesis, to continue soil health, to feed that underground army, and it was really beautiful all fall out there. So it really nice canopy. There's even a marigold out there in it. I think that main plant you'll see there's a marigold, and this is combine day. So this is Jules Van Tine. He's driving his combine. Overall, I should change the slide. That's Jules. Jules was kind enough to come out and run around and measure all of our plots. Altogether, we had 30 different measurements, which we used a weigh wagon to measure. We stepped them all off with a big long ruler, and they were pretty precise. And it took a couple days to do the whole thing, but overall, we weighed 12 and a half of the 22 acres. And so I think it's definitely on a commercial scale as far as that goes. And this was yesterday. So, I think that you can kind of expect this. This is a nitro radish that's somehow still alive out there. It's kind of hard to imagine. Next to that are clovers, vetch, and some cereals. And you can kind of see that after the corn stalks were baled, after the combine, after all of these things have taken place, the areas that still really have this green material are collecting more material. It looks like they've almost been irrigated at this point compared to the rest of the field. And so here we go in the first year of that $1 million question that I think that, that we kind of need to talk about. And you've got, starting up here on the top left, you've got the corn varieties. Again, that's Pioneer, the Aquamax Drought Tolerant, the Partners Brand 6613 conventional biological seed treatment, Partners Brand 6613 genetically modified, all the different tillage treatments, the net income, and that's a single cropping year. You know, this doesn't take into account the depreciation on Jules' pickup and stuff like that. That would be incredibly hard to understand. And that's the yield there next to it. So, there's two things in a single year that you can take away, I think, from all of this madness, is that, clearly it tends towards less invasive, cheaper treatments also make more corn. That is, it's pretty clear there. You can see the conventional towards the bottom here. Another thing that we were incredibly surprised with in all of this was the 6613 conventional with the biological seed treatment. It did really well. It did surprisingly well across a few of the different types of tillage, and at a soil health conference, the really the neatest thing here, I think, too, to look at is there are these two here in the middle. They are the same variety, the same tillage. One has a cover crop. One made 22 more bushels of corn. So those interseeded covers not only didn't compete with it, they actually made more corn. Again, that's wide row, same population, same 30,000 stand count at the end, but there's more corn in the bin. So I think that's pretty interesting. And we will definitely be trying to repeat some of this next year, which we'll get to in a minute. Next year, let's see here. I think this is something else, and this is a little bit to Elizabeth Black's talk there just a second ago. I think that it's really interesting, to soil health pay. And we took Haney tests in June and October, and this is just the soil health score of each different treatment. And so in a conventional tillage system, the soil health score changed negative 43% in a single season. And part of that is this intensive tillage opened everything up. It respired, tons of carbon release. It looked pretty good for about 3 weeks. Moving into strip tillage, a little less. Minimum tillage, cover crops. In this system, in October, you saw a picture there a second ago. There was still plenty of alive material, plenty of respiration, going like crazy. So that's that one. Okay, and into next year, that was our 22-acre field. This is Highway 287 and 52, just south of Longmont, just to give you an idea of where we are in the world. So Jules has agreed to let us use 10 acres out of his pivot that's right there next to it to kind of expand on this, put it under a sprinkler, be able to push these systems a little bit more, and kind of keep going from there. The 22 acres is going to go into winter wheat. So key points. Conservation pays. I think that it's pretty obvious there. You make more corn. If that's the biggest goal, it makes more money. And I think that another thing that's really important to keep in mind here in our watering systems is to utilize our resources when we have them. So we have a lot of water in the summer here. We have surface water. We can use that to grow these crops in the middle of that cornfield and keep that living root through the year. I'm going to have stuff out there alive that winter crops that I planted June 23rd, they're going to go like crazy until I kill them next year. So I think that's also kind of important, to really utilize that stuff and not just waste some seed. So here's my contact information. This is quick 10 minutes on this whole thing. I've got a whole lot of more information. If anybody would like to see any of that or just wants to talk a little bit more about it next year, you got some input or something you would like to see, please send me an email or get to me around here. So thank you.
Thank you, Peyton. Next up, we have Clark Harshbarger with Mad Ag and Restore Colorado.
Good afternoon, everybody. Before I get started, I want to mention my colleagues here, Lauren and Vanessa, Adrian, and Christine, and I think everyone should give them a round of applause for putting the conference on today. And, did a great job. So as Lauren said, my name's Clark Harshbarger. I worked for the USDA NRCS for 17 years. Left that job to go home and farm on a bit of a sabbatical back in Ohio on a grass farm where we raised grass-fed beef and sheep and pushed around chickens and pigs and all that fun stuff. Ended up being a bit of a sabbatical. I was gone for about 2 years. Recently moved back to Colorado. Phil Taylor, our executive director of Mad Agriculture, welcomed me back and gave me a full-time job to be the director of stewardship with Mad Agriculture. So it's nice to be back. I also want to have another round of applause for our farmers here. We haven't really given them a shout out yet too, so all the farmers in the house. Yeah, so it's hard, y'all, like all this stuff that we're talking about and what people are going through to try to change their mindset and put the labor in, the back, your feet, all that stuff. And farming can be lonely. So Daniel, so beautiful what you've done with your community and how you've lifted up other people. It's so good to hear their stories like you out there. And I know Treehouse and Spreewell have like a community farm out there on 63rd, and a lot of really neat things happening here in Boulder too. So that's part of it. That's what Mad Ag was started here as our farm forums. We had a community farm forum out the LaGrange, Latona. That's how I met Phil. Started participating in those things. And what the Soil Revolution Conference does is help us have that community. So I just want to say all that because it's important to me. So I'm going to try to see if this stuff works. Okay, so this is creating a revolution in agriculture. That's kind of Mad Ag's mission statement. We heal our relationship with ourselves, each other, and the places we live. One of the concepts of Mad Agriculture was to try to help folks that were wanting to transition to organic, but didn't have the means, maybe the resources, the funding to get through that period. And so that was the initial graph. So just kind of give you a little background of what the impetus of the company is, and what we're trying to help push along organic farming and regenerative organic farming. So kind of our secret sauce is, as a conservationist, as a soil scientist for 17 years, and you come in with all these big ideas and, do this and that and the other and follow these principles and life is good and everything. But it takes a catalyst, to have some of these ideas, equipment, startups, and we can get into debt service and in debt really quickly. And so one thing we wanted to try to do was come up with a capital fund that would actually incentivize the change and help give a longer relationship with farmers. So we're reimagining the relationships with farm banks that they have, and we're actually providing a longer term to our loans. And so it's a really radical idea, and hence named the Perennial Fund. It's named after a perennial relationship that we want to have with our farmers that participate in the fund. I participate in our stewardship, which is kind of we're a guide to the heroes, which is our farmers and our caretakers and our stewards and the people that are doing the work that feed us and clothe us. And then the last thing we've recently done, which has been super exciting, is we've hired 2 marketers. And so they work with brands that are trying to grow brands that are now ready to receive foods that are being grown in this radical, reimagined way with the landscapes and with communities and whatnot. And so they've just done some amazing work. They're working with the largest perennial co-op in the United States in western Minnesota, the Perennial Promise. And so we're brokering all the kernza that they're growing and trying to get them fair price with the Land Institute as the steward of that seed. So it's been really exciting to see their work come to fruition too, really quickly. What's that slide? So this is just kind of where we started. There's Marcus McCauley, who's in the audience today. He's been a friend of mine. He was the first farmer I ever talked to when I moved to Colorado in 2014 after the floods, like the luminaires say. And so anyways, so this is where we've grown. We work with some dairies, potato farmers in the San Luis Valley. We've worked on some farms here in Boulder County, but like this summer, and then in the fall, I've spent 2 trips down to Louisiana. We're working with the BIPOC community through the Jubilee Justice organization, and so it's been super inspiring to try to help lift up reparations and try to make those communities the leader in regenerative ag and the rice farming in southeast United States. And so the Perennial Fund, as I mentioned, we did a couple road trips the last couple summers to visit around, to meet the farmers that are receiving this money. And one of the neat things we've done, we've partnered with Dr. Lundgren in a soil lab that goes around a consultant's RES, and we're trying to study the impact of this money. So as we deliver the money and lift up these farmers and give these opportunities to get through that transition, we're actually trying to collect this information, and Dr. Lundgren and his team are helping us lead that research. And so it's been really exciting to hear his talk today too, and how powerful that information can be for policy and for brands and to change and help behavior. And so this is kind of what I do. I'm work in this model. It's a framework. There's a lot of concentrics, but it's Savory-based, Savory Institute. I've been working as a holistic manager since the late 90s, where I learned about it in college. And then we start in the steward, and we go through the agrarian, kind of a permaculture kind of circle about things that we have the least amount of impact on, like the climate, to the soil, which we can have the most impact on. And then we try to infuse that through our community and our networks and our impact through our markets. And so just today, I just wanted to mention a little bit about Restore Colorado. So this is a partner opportunity with Mad Ag. We've worked on some city lands, but the county, Boulder County, and then of course Zero Footprint. Zero Footprint, amazing organization. Anthony, I think Karen is her name. They're out of the Bay Area in California. They were chefs, and they wanted to try to let people participate in this movement that don't own land, don't have access to land. And so, like, how can the general citizens, much like Elizabeth with the Citizen Science Project, how can people that just want to eat and behave in a more conscious way contribute? And so they came up with this brilliant idea that we've tried to adopt here in Colorado called Restore Colorado that I'll just talk a little bit about. So the concept of it is that restaurants that we, that we patronize and go to or we attend, you can give a 1% surcharge. And so we're trying to get this pot of money that then we can then redistribute to farmers that want to do regenerative intention into their livelihoods and on their farm. And so it's a small fund that started out last year. We're trying to build our restaurant collaborations. That's what Zero Footprint, that's what they do in the partnership. Besides it being their endeavor, they also build the partners with the restaurants. And then Mad Agriculture is stewarding how those practices are put into a system that can then impact lands and the farmers' bottom lines. And so this is sort of how it works. Again, basically back, instead of going farm to table, it's from table to farm. And so Boulder County has a nice diagram that you can see there. Kind of explain it. There's some of the partners that we're working with and kind of how it's collaborative. It's a nice graph, circular. These are the projects that we worked on last year. We won't get too much into it, but we were very compost-centric because the nature of the original grant to lift a program like this off. Peyton and I were talking a little bit earlier about like the type of compost, and Daniel mentioned that too. We had some hard learnings about that using confinement agriculture, feedlot operation byproducts, their manure that's been then therefore composted versus single stream recycling. There was a lot of pluses and minuses to both those systems, but we need to test the material before you apply it, especially if you're applying it on scale. Know what your seed in. Christine Newton's really kept us on point. The NRCS is now participating in a practice. I think it's 808 is their code, whatever that means to all y'all, but it's just coming to mind now. But what it really means is that we want to make sure that the things that we're putting on our fields are what the land needs, and that it's the right balance before we get something out of balance and cause a problem like Elizabeth was mentioning that can't happen to you. So be really mindful about that, and that's kind of one of Mad Ag's role in this, is to help farmers make the right choices so that they're actually doing something that the land is receiving. So that's what Marcus's farm that he's stewarding over on the Bennett property, which is I think it's a city property. I always get confused. But and then the other one was Esoteric Culinary. Is it a city property? Yeah, both Boulder County properties that are being stewarded by one of our community members. And then this one here was Grandma Grass. That's Andy Brighter. So he's in a perennial system. He raises livestock. And so we were actually trying this practice out on a perennial system. And then Frontline Farms was a partner outside of Boulder County that we went down to Denver, an amazing group of farmers that are really community-based, doing regenerative practices on small scale, getting real food, nutrient-dense food to underserved communities in the Denver area. So I think with that, a couple more slides. This is some of the practices. You know, all of that is just really, to me, it's a system. Let's talk it through. This year, we're going to be compost-centric again because of the nature of the grant, but as Restore grows into 2023, it's going to be how the farmer wants to reimagine taking this money to lift up how they envision serving the resources that they steward. So questions and answers. I didn't put my name up there all fancy like Peyton, who did an excellent job on your talk, by the way, Peyton. We're so lucky to have both him and Vanessa here at the local district. But yeah, I'm just Clark at madagriculture.org. There's only 9 of us at MadAg, so I'm pretty easy to find. We're going to launch Restore Colorado 2022 in January, so the application will be live January 5th through the end of the month. There's not a big pot of money like the sustainability tax, so it's sort of like a little baby fund, but we're here to help farmers do good work here in Boulder County. So thanks for your time, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Clark. Next up, we have Vanessa McCracken from the Boulder Valley and St. Vrain Conservation. I'm sorry, Longmont. Why did I say that? Ugh, can't even read. Talk about the STAR program. Thanks, Vanessa.
Okay. All right, good afternoon. I'm the last of the local updates and we're behind time, but I'm going to do my update anyway. All right, so I am the district manager at the Boulder Valley and Longmont Conservation Districts. I've been in that role for about 2 years, and I am here to talk to you today about the STAR program. You've heard bits and pieces of it from Cindy and some other folks, and from Nick at Colorado Corn, so I'm here to give you more of the local update and what it means here in Boulder County. So what is the STAR program? It's a free and voluntary tool to inspire producers and structure conversations around soil health. It was created originally by a conservation district in Illinois for other conservation districts to use as well. And here in Colorado, as you heard, it is run through the Colorado Department of Agriculture. It is a practice-based rating system that assigns points for implementing soil health practices. So producers who are part of the program receive a star rating from 1 to 5 stars that help producers understand how well they're doing in promoting soil health and upholding the 5 principles of soil health. So, how does it work? So step 1, producers that are chosen for the program, there will be initial consultations, likely with Peyton and myself, where we work with you and complete the initial consultation form. Then we work through field forms where points are assigned for soil health practices, which are then converted into the star rating from 1 to 5 stars. Third step, you will receive your field sign and really get to the meat of the program, which is implementing those practices. And step 4, there is an incentive payment to producers that has to be matched by the producer. And here in our conservation districts, those payments are between $75 and $150 an acre. So a little more details. This program is a 3-year commitment. It's funded for 3 years. So the way we see it rolling out, again, this is a new program. Things could change, but in 2022, coming up very quickly in January, we'll have made those producer selections, and conservation district staff will meet with those producers, decide on soil health practices to implement. We'll complete those STAR field forms. Spring, summer, fall, whenever it makes sense for those practices, they will be implemented. Likely we'll take a soil health test in the fall to keep it consistent, get through all the reimbursement and match paperwork, and then the producer will be reimbursed in December of 2022. 2023 will be mostly a repeat. There's no soil health test in the middle. There's one at the beginning and one at the end, but we'll continue to look at the progress, look at the challenges, and work towards continued improvement in 2023, again, with all the paperwork and the reimbursements each year as well. So in 2024, again, we really want to make this a partnership and provide all that technical assistance that each producer needs to make this the most successful for them. Continue to implement and improve, add more soil health practices, whatever makes sense in each particular situation. Again, there's the Haney soil health test, which will be taken at the end of the program to hopefully show that you have increased your soil health. Complete that STAR field form also to see if you've moved up in the STAR ranking from, say, 1 to 3, and get you reimbursed once again. So just quickly, in case you're a producer out there thinking, oh gosh, do I have to put cash into this program to match? These are all things that count as match. So the labor that you're already putting into, for materials and equipment and fuel and irrigation, those things do all count as your match towards this program. Ryan has more information about this at his booth in the back, but this is just an idea of the star rating. How are you rated on those stars? So 1 star looks like an average. That's a field with practices similar to what 80% of those same type of fields are doing in this region. 2 stars, we call an above average field where you're beginning to implement soil health principles. 3 stars is we're moving towards great, implementing multiple. 4 stars would be an excellent field, implementing several, and 5 stars would be more the ideal field, implementing all 5 soil health principles. This picture is not from Colorado because we don't have these yet, but if you drive around the county in the next couple years, hopefully you will be seeing very similar star field signs so you know which properties are implementing this program. What counts as a soil health practice? This is a whole long list of stuff from the NRCS, but the point here is that there's a lot of things that we can look at in going into your soil health practices. So we'll work with you on an individual basis to see what makes the most sense on your property. Choose what makes sense to you, what makes sense, to Peyton and I and our district boards, and really try to move the soil health score and the practices forward. So there's a lot of things that can be included in this program. A couple more details. Okay, the Longmont Conservation District and the Boulder Valley Conservation District are 2 separate entities who were both chosen as 2 of the 17 conservation districts in Colorado. They have different funding sources, like Cindy mentioned. There's all this money from different places. So in the Longmont Conservation District, we're looking for an additional 6 producers to be part of this program. The incentive payment in the Longmont Conservation District is the $150 per acre. The minimum acreage for a field is 1 acre. In aggregate, we have to our obligation to the state is that we will have 280 acres in the Longmont Conservation District enrolled in the STAR program. So we cannot choose 6 1-acre fields. We have to have some larger fields, likely mixed in with some smaller fields as well. That incentive payment is $2,000 minimum and $10,000 maximum in Longmont. Boulder Valley Conservation District, slightly less funding, different source. We're looking for 5 producers. The incentive payment is $75 an acre, again, a 1-acre minimum. In total in Boulder Valley, we will be covering 200 acres, and you see the minimums there is $1,000 and a $5,000 maximum. There's also a component to this program of non-vehicular equipment grants. We're still kind of working out the details of those, but that's something that is a possibility as we work through the STAR program. So if you don't know which conservation district you reside in, here you go. Highway 52 is basically the dividing line. So if your farm is north of Highway 52, you're in the Longmont Conservation District. If you are south of Highway 52, you are in the Boulder Valley Conservation District. If you're outside of those lines, you're in a different conservation district, likely, who may or may not be implementing the STAR program, but there are ways to be in the program directly through the state as well. Maybe next time I'll give a talk on the history of conservation districts, we'll see. So producer selection, the state did give us some guidelines on how to choose producers into this program, so I just wanted to go through this real quick. It's really important to the conservation district, to me personally, to Peyton, that the producers we choose for this program have a real interest in conservation and really want to see this be successful. We don't want this to be a program where we're handing out dollars that aren't making a difference on the landscape. So that is really important to us. Also a history of good record keeping for land management and financial outcomes is important. It doesn't hurt to be well respected and influential in the community. You need to make sure if you're leasing land that you have the ability to stay in the program for 3 years and be able to have operational stability. We're looking for common production types in the area, and interested in participating in peer-to-peer mentoring and learning, and perhaps even standing up here and talking about what you did in the STAR program over the course of the time. Okay, here we go. I do want to give a huge shout out. Cindy mentioned some of this. Cindy Lair and her team at the Department of Ag, who have done a tremendous job bringing this exact program through the conservation districts. I don't know how long it's been, if ever, maybe not never, but it's been a long time since a program has been funded through a conservation district from the state level, and that's a big deal to us, you know, a local organization, to have our own program to roll out to producers. And Cindy mentioned the Colorado Collaborative for Healthy Soils as well. There's many people involved in the building of the STAR program and the Soil Health Initiative, you know, all kinds of people from CSU and NRCS and lots of producers and, you know, anybody who is interested in giving their opinion. It's a huge opportunity for the Conservation District and our staff as well. And I apologize, my quote on the bottom there. I actually wasn't even put this on, but it's on my email, on every email. So, you know, for us, and for me, again, personally, you can't save the land without saving the people. To save either, you have to save both. Both are so important in our work at the Conservation District and what I want to do in working with you as partners. You know, we care about the land, we want to save the world, climate change is, you know, it's all there. But our personal relationship with the producers, that is equally as important to us at the districts as well. And I think, okay, so if you're interested, again, this is a new program. It's been rolling out quickly. We have a real quick turnaround. It says complete a short questionnaire by December 10th. That's 2 days from now if you're interested in this program. We are trying to get our producers selected at our district board meetings next week. Boulder Valley meets Monday, Longmont meets Tuesday. I know that might be too quick, but if you are interested, Peyton and I are here, Ryan Taylor's here. Ryan, were you gonna, what?
I just want to say, in the off chance that they somehow miss that window, you can still participate individually on your own without a district. There's just no money attached to it. So I just want to base that.
Thank you, Ryan. Yes, all kinds of opportunities. Can you please put that back up for a second, Adrian? I know I'm over time, but this is important. Anyway, there's questionnaires in the back. There's more information about STAR in the back over here at the green cover table. There's Ryan Taylor, Peyton and I are here. Please fill out the questionnaire if you're interested and come find us if you have additional questions. That's it. Thanks.
All right, before we invite Daniel back up to the stage, we have one other Mentimeter question. It's not even the second to the last, I'm sorry. In 4 words or less, what are your greatest barriers to integrating livestock into your fields? So these should pop up at any moment. As you fill them out. Labor, knew we were going to see that one. Fences and water, not living on site. Phosphorus. Time, yes. No money to buy livestock. And I think we have to scroll to see more as they pop up, but you can feel free to keep adding to that. Because we will at least aggregate that and have that going forward.